Now,
Okay.
wait, let me make sure, okay.
Just let the class know, Dennis Dowling, volunteer, site director for a Santa Clara Valley Water District watershed grant. It was $106,000, pretty good chunk of change for an environmental site of 40 acres called Ulastat. And to give you some background information, I'll say that Ulastat is 40 acres of land in the city of Santa Clara. It's owned by the city of Santa Clara. And what I like to do is give you a history of this in our the PowerPoint here. And I've been working there for 13 years with a very small group. And that we are trying to restore this area to native habitat, native California habitat. We're a restoration project. We started with no money. There was you'll see a couple of things where we did get some money from, but what I want to do here is start with John Muir. I'm going to go back further, but 1870. The goodness of the weather as I journeyed towards Pacheco was beyond all praise and description. You know, Pacheco Pass. John Muir got to the city of San Francisco, asked which way to the Sierras, and they pointed south. And he walked the 50 miles down to Santa Clara, and then up by somewhere around Los Altos. He looked across this fantastic valley, and this is what he said. The air was perfectly delicious, sweet, enough for the breath of angels. Every drop of it gave a separate and distinct peace and pleasure. I do not believe that Adam and Eve ever tasted better in the balmiest nook. That's the old John Muir way of writing. The last of the Coast Range foothills were in near view all the way to Gilroy. The union with the valleys by curves and slopes of inimitable beauty, and they were robed with the greenest grass and richest light ever beheld, and colored and shaded with millions of flowers of every hue, chiefly of purple and gold and yellow, and hundreds of crystal rills join songs with the larks, filling the valley with music, and etc. there. So, from making it an Eden from end to end. So, this is what we started as. And what we wanted to do here is to restore this. And in order to do this, we have to do two things. Since about 1800, 1776, people have been taking things out of the valley. We've taken the soil, the grass, the native grasses, the native shrubs, have all been removed. And so when you take something out of the universe, you know this one, you find it's hitched to everything else. But when you put something into the universe, like orchard trees or DDT or arsenic, okay, you find that it's hitched to everything else. And you know that by the history of DDT and eggs of pelicans and birds. So that's what the idea of it, restoration is going to be kind of is our concern, what we're trying to do. And I've been battling with many people, California Native Plant Society, and very learned people that have their perception of what it should be restored to. And I started planting plants there, of native California plants, and I would have many people come and say, you can't plant, that's not supposed to be there. This is supposed to be a wetland. Well, I said, well, this is not a wetland now, because we have a 30-foot levee, and we pump the wells dry. It's no longer the same land. You can't put things right exactly in there. So I kept saying, well, hey, I'm not restoring it to what your perception is. I want to go back a little further. Now, if you take a look at this picture, I didn't take this, by the way, this photo. This is San Jose 10,000 years ago. Okay, and can you actually see there's going to be a building here. So, have you ever seen this picture? Okay, and this is Discovery Museum, the Children's Museum, and St. James Park is over there. Okay, and right in the middle there is the place where all the big downtown buildings are. So I'm thinking, well, when they start accusing me of putting a native plant, and I'm just selecting a native plant to put in there, they said, well, that's not supposed to be there. Well, I said, well, how do you know? Were you here 10,000 years ago? So I said, kind of jokingly, say, I was there. I know it was there. So, but that's 10,000 years ago, downtown San Jose. And it's kind of fun to take a look at because now, watch that. That's what it is today. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. We'll go back and do that again. See, there's the Guadalupe River. Here's the woolly mammoths and the various other Pleistocene animals there that were definitely found in that, and we know that they were there. And you see the meandering Guadalupe River, probably late spring. And then, oh, by the way, see the big mountain? That's Mission Peak. You guys know where Mission Peak is, right? Fremont. So there's Mission Peak way there. And then we're seeing the whole portion of the San Jose Valley then. And now, what does it look like now? That's what it looks like now. Okay? And by the way, I kind of let you know these two pictures, they're at the Discovery Museum. So borrow a little kid, the children's museum, borrow a little kid or somewhere and go see this, and it's up there. It's kind of a kick. It's wasting out these little kids. This is quite an impressive comparison there. So now let's jump to 1776. That was up to 10,000 years. And here we have the expedition of Juan Bautista de Anza. He, in 1776, he organized a party of 300 soldiers and people, families, children, and potential settlers and priests to inspect Upper California, for a possibility of placing missions. So this was actually his second expedition, but this is the big one because he had 300 people in that. By the way, it took 2 years to go from New Mexico, and he went up just about where 101, the highway all the way to LA is. That's 101. And in order to identify where he was going, the story goes that children, the 8-10-year-old, would be in the wagon with a giant sack of the yellow flower seed. What do you call it? The major.
Mustard.
It's in the orchards. In orchards. It's not sunflower. They'll come to me later. I'll do that. But not dandelions. We're close. Here we go. It's a radish. It's a. It's all when there's an orchard. It's all the yellow that comes through there.
Isn't it mustard?
Mustard. Yeah. Yellow mustard. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Good. Yellow mustard, and they would throw that out, so that a year and a half later, they would look up on a hill and they could see, and it would grow. It's an annual that would come up from seed, and they would have a yellow brick road. And that now today is the El Camino Real. That goes all the way down to LA. So Diaz had a tremendous influence on the environment in this area. And if you can see with the yellow line that he went to, and there's number 97 in the middle, it's Illustack Natural Area. And in 1776, his writing in a journal, which they had, Pedro Font was a journalist, and he was supposed to write everything there. The 97th meant that it was his 97th camping spot on his expedition. Okay, he had gone up to San Francisco, couldn't get across. It says, hey, that'd be a nice place for a mission. And then he came down around to the area right at 97, which was called Illustack Natural Area. Okay, that's identified on this. And that was one of the sites that he met some Ohlone Indians. We'll talk about that much more later. But the Ohlone Indians, turns out, the old story up until 3 weeks ago, that I've learned a lot more, because I've come in contact with the major leaders of the remaining Ohlone Indians in the Bay Area. and that's going to be my second part of my presentation. But up till then, this is what I would say. I said, well, when I would tell people about that Ullstack naturally surrounding, Deanza met a band of Indians, and he came to them and said, help us cross the river, because it was in March, and there was a flood season, and it was all meandering on through there. It wasn't channelized like it is now. And the chief came up to him and said, you know, and his chief was, who are you? He says, Uli. And Uli was supposedly the chief. And he said, well, help us across the river. Make your people come and help us where we can get across. This is on Tasman. It's actually very near where the 49er Stadium is. On Tasman Avenue, if you continue on toward north, okay? There's Cisco on one side of Guadalupe River, and we'll see that a little bit more in detail later. And it turns out that Chief Uli said, Uli, stack, and walk away. And stack in the Ohlone language is place. And so he went, Uli, it's an Uli stack, Uli's place, not the answer's place. And walked away. It didn't help him get across there. So that is not quite, somewhere I'm going to try to find that, because people have told me that, you know, and I'm telling that story. But a couple of Ohlone Indians said I'm kind of wrong on that, but we'll see. So we'll get to that. So you can see where the Mission Santa Clara is, and the Mission Santa Clara, where at Santa Clara University, that's its fourth place, maybe even fifth, because they put it right next to the Guadalupe River, near Ullstack, okay, near kind of by the airport and down in that area, and it flooded, and they had to move it, and then it flooded again, moved again, flooded again, moved again. So it flooded 4 times until we finally got it over where the original Santa Clara addition is now. So that's 1776, and the first recognition of the word Ullstack. And then with that big planning there was some funding from Open Space Authority to put signs in here and to make it a open space. Okay, I got it named. This is kind of important. A natural area, because it belongs to the city of Santa Clara. The city of Santa Clara doesn't have any environmental group at all. Like San Jose has an environmental department, 118,000 people. They don't have an environmental group. They, and the Parks and Recreation, did not have a clue of what I was going to try to do and what our group is going to do. And that was to return it to native plants. And so they said, well, we'll call it Ullstack Park. Oh my God, you can't call it a park. It's not a park, it's a natural area. And so one of my students, I was a high school student then, or I had high school, I taught high school, and he was at Santa Clara University, and his job was to be on a political, some thing that he was on the Parks and Rec Commission, and he came to me and says, what should I call it? I says, call it a natural area, don't let them call it a park. And so, boom, it got passed. That's a very important statement right there, to call it a natural area. And then that way, then we were able to get funding from Open Space Authority. So now the city of Santa Clara gets $30,000, $40,000 a year to maintain it as an open space, supposedly in perpetuity. That's what the Open Space Authority said. So let's continue on. Let's get up to 1840. 1840-ish, and a little after that, 1848, I think, is probably through this. This is a Spanish land grant. So when the Spanish owned California, okay, the Spanish said, well, we're going to give land grants to Spaniards and the friendly Mexican people that were part of that. But it turned out that there's a few Spanish land grants that were given to Native American Indians that were kind of doing the work of cattle, grazing and such on the area. And so if you take a look, there's Rancho Ullstack. And 3 Ohlone Indians were given the deed to about 8,000 acres of land, right where the 49er Stadium is, and between Guadalupe and Saratoga Creek. Quite impressive. Hey, that was pretty nice. They only had it for 2 years, because you know who came in? Those evil invasion people. United States of America. And they took over California. And then within 1 year, all of a sudden, because Indians with the United States were not considered people or citizens, they were persecuted unmercifully by California, by the United States, and you can quote me on that. And I have people that I talked to yesterday that are extremely militant about that and angry because they know, and it was taken away from them. Somehow, a guy named Hoppy just all of a sudden became the owner of the thousands of acres that were given to the Indians. Because they weren't citizens, so they couldn't hold any land. Okay, so they're out of the picture in 1850. So for 1 year, they had that land there. So now let's take a look at an 1890 topographic map. This comes from UC Berkeley's historical map section. You can go into there, and then you can get historical maps all the way back to 1890 on various places there. And if you see this, guess what it's at? It's there. It's Ullastack. You can see that. And then right below Ullastack, in a real small line, there is this word asylum. There was Insane Asylum. And you guys know what that was? That's the Agnew Insane Asylum. So there was in California, started, and a huge area of land was taken over after Hoppy kind of lost it. They said, "I want to give it to the, we'll have to make a hospital there." And so they, this is from 1890, 1885, 1890 to 1980. There was a hospital for not only insane people, for children and adults that had extreme disabilities, mental and physical disabilities, that didn't have a place to go. As my dad said there, that it was very active, and it was a home for these people, and they were cared for. They had a nice museum. They worked. You know, there was all these farms, and they actually tried to get them outdoors and through that. And then Ronald Reagan said, "We're spending too much money on these people. We'll just put them in homes everywhere." And to this day, there's indication that many of the homeless people are products of being kicked out of a sheltered life that they really needed to have there. And it's kind of tragic. And now, let's take a look up close. You know, we find in the Google thing there, we'll jump all the way there, and you'll see Ullastack Natural Area and what's around it. All this area here is massive condominiums and apartments that have the Nantucket buildings, and they're, I think it's $2,400 to rent these places. Big time, it's a lot of time expensive. And there's almost thousands and thousands of the people live on these right here, and even go down even further in what is called the Rivermark area. Okay, now, and it's kind of interesting to note that when I park here every morning and this is the Butterfly Garden here, and I park here, and as I come down Lake Mill Road, I see about 15 people, okay, young guys. Once in a while there's a girl. They're all about 3 feet apart, but they're all texting and on their computer. Like this. And they're standing there. There's some in sandals, and there's a lot of people from India, okay, and different countries, and you stand there. And then a big, beautiful bus comes. One of those nice, big, beautiful buses, and it takes them away. Guess where they take them? To Google. Yeah, Cisco, Yahoo. Yeah, anybody of you guys are one of those people? I don't know. I think you can say that. But they just take them away. Well, they're what is called H-1B1 workers, and they're in here on a work visa. Well, what do their wives do, or their spouses do? They stay home. Take care of kids. And they go stir crazy. Okay, they're in a different country, different culture. Okay, in kind of a barren area. Okay, in terms of there's a Rivermark, there's a Safeway, there's Starbucks. I think it's a Pete's Coffee. Okay, and they're there, and they go stir crazy. So many of those people, the wives, the parents, the grandparents, is a constant stream to come over to this nature area and take walks through that area. And I talk to them, and then they volunteer to work through that area. Okay, now I'm going to continue on a little faster here. So here's what we're doing now. Return native California plants, remove invasive species, build a creek and vernal pond, provide a home for native butterflies, and develop an indigenous people's garden. We have first Saturday and third Sunday of the month that we have volunteer days, as you can see there. And this is kind of our mission statement. Okay, and when we have volunteers from Intel, because Intel's volunteered, we've had even the CEO of Intel come and volunteer. And Google, people, IHS Chemical, and a myriad of the companies and high schools and colleges and religious groups. We've had the Chu Chi group of Buddhists. We've had actually Muslim groups from Granada School and area there that have worked. We've had Santa Clara University people, fraternities from there. So we've got little different groups for each one of those. And what we're doing is trying to return native California plants to Illistac. So that's what we've been doing for 13 years. Illistac@gmail.com is our name there. I know you might not be finished writing all that, but we'll download some of this. So the Illistac Natural Area restoration is a realm of ecology destined to become the single most important environmental effort of the future. So this is a professor from Illinois that says restoration is where it's at. This is where we need to focus our attention as environmentalists. So prairie restoration is plainly and simply a process of manipulating perennial herbaceous plant in succession. So here is part of our, as I mentioned, we wrote a grant from Santa Clara Valley Watershed and Santa Clara Valley Water District. And here we are planting 4,000 plugs of grasses, actually 5,000 little on our hands and knees of alkaline ryegrass and purple needlegrass. And these are native grasses. Because one of the things that I want to get across is that what you perceive of what California is like is not accurate. And the hills around here would not turn brown because all the green that you see up there are the native plants. And all of the brown, 90% of the brown that you see are the invasive species, we call them. These are the European grasses that they brought over when the cattle and cows came in. Realize that in 1880, there was like 6 million sheep in California. John Muir said that the Sierra Nevadas live in mortal fear of the sheep because in his first year, he followed a herd of sheep up and saw it just completely inundate the native shrubbery because it was green. Okay? And then they tore that out, and then they had to plant the European grasses, and the European grasses the feet came in and took over the annuals. So it's kind of sad on that situation there. So I'm stopping here just to state State Bridge, and to give you a little background of where I'm coming from. I'm actually a third generation. I'm 71. I'm third generation Bay Area. I'm from Berkeley. My dad was born in Berkeley on 6th Street. Okay, he's 94, and he's doing fine, living on his own, and which is great. I get closer to him each year, and he used to play ball. He loved ball. He was a radical guy. Young kid, went to Berkeley High, cut school to go to the opening of the 1936 Bay Bridge. Okay, the Bay Bridge. And as they were waiting for all the speeches were coming there. There was about 200 or 300 people, a lot of kids that wanted to do it. And they were going to, the cars were driving, all of the governor was speaking. And all of a sudden someone says, "Spirit of the governor," and they broke through the ribbon, and they all ran across the Bay Bridge. Okay, and then saw the dance, and he tells a story, and he gets to the tunnel to the other side, and the governor called the army at the Presidio, and they came in, and this is 1936, with bayonets drawn and marching them back to Oakland. So the radical Berkeley people already. Okay? But anyway, he was a machinist, but the people that he worked for was Dr. Ernest Lawrence, and Dr. John Lawrence, Glenn T. Seaborn, Melvin Calvin, Louis Alvarez, Oppenheimer. What do all those have in common? They're all Nobel Prize winners. So he was, when they built their equipment to that, he was the one that actually used the machine. And so he was first named basis of actually 8 Nobel Prize winners. And I used to go up there in Berkeley and sit there and do little science projects once in a while. And so that's where my background is. So I kind of sat at the knee of these Nobel Prize winners, the greatest minds of the 20th century, right in Berkeley. It's a remarkable thing there. But I just got a BA degree. I didn't get a higher degree. I took advanced classes, UC Berkeley, San Jose State, and I'm 45 years environmental science teacher. So that's where I'm coming from. So that's my background. And now let's go back to Ullestack. James Lick Mansion along Guadalupe. You know James Lick, high school, okay, in the Lick Observatory, okay. He came from South America, by the way, with Ghirardelli. Same thing with Sir Jimmy, but chocolate. He was he loved Lick Mill, some mills through there. 1890, area called Agnew, Orchards, Valley of Heart's Delight, turned into a golf course. This is the background of Ullestack. And then the planned Riverwalk development. And then recessions are good for the environment. You know why? No development. And that's what happened, because if there wasn't a recession, Ullestack would be just filled with condominiums. And that was the last section. There was a little reason why they couldn't build on the whole thing, which we'll talk about. But there's a reason there's certain things. Well, Hetch Hetchy goes through. They can't build on the pipes there. And we'll talk about the other things that happened through that. So recessions are good for restoration projects. And then I have to give extreme credit to Ottoman Society, who Craig Breon, who was the director, who gave an earful to Clista Siena, whose husband was mayor at that time. Okay, and that land is valuable for birds and animals, and maybe we could leave it open. And then 2 people, Greg, Chris and Jean Solander, came to me as I was a high school teacher at Wilcox and said, we need to write a grant, and we need to have an education component, what can you do? So we sat down and they wrote and I just gave my ideas. That's how I didn't have to do all the pencil and paperwork. I just threw out ideas. And they got a $30,000 grant from PG&E and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And wasn't it nice for PG&E to give us the money? Well, that was penalty that they had to pay, like $10 million when Mary Brockovich, back in Southern California, there was they had poisoned the soil and people were getting sick, and they kept denying it, and they finally found out it was PG&E's fault. Okay? So they contributed that money to environmental. They had to, and so we started planting in about 1999, and then in 2000, the city identified this as Ullestack Natural Area. 2001 City Council and gave us the opportunity to turn it into native plants. So we've gotten, this is the funding that we've gotten. We've got Santa Clara Open Space Authority, which gave, that is inaccurate, several $100,000. I just because of what the politics I'm going to talk about later, it's now $800,000. So they were given $800,000 to maintain it, improve it, to make those plans, and to start developing professionally restoration. Well, they did kind of not a very good job, because they would pay someone to start planting plants, and then they would plant them, and then the people would say, the group would say, well, we want to maintain them, because it takes a couple of years. You can't just plant a plant and walk away and put the drip system on and expect that everything would work. And the city didn't give them any more contract. So now that's up to our volunteer group to try to maintain 40 acres of land that they started putting the money towards, and then didn't put any more money. So here is the mitigation at the far end, which we won't look at. There is a pond, and the pond is a mitigated pond, wetland. Everybody remembers 3Com? Remember the 3Com there? And they built a huge building right off 237 by Alviso. And they built their parking lot on a wetland, 2.5 acres on the wetland. And that 2.5 acres was in Santa Clara. Federal law states if anybody builds and fills in a wetland, you must build and create a wetland twice as large in the same community. So that is, instead of a 2.5 acre, they had to build a 5-acre pond in Santa Clara. Now, where in the heck do you find 5 acres of wetland in Santa Clara? I mean, the only place was Lewiston. So it was nice that we saved it, so that they could do that. And federal law, and only 5-acre site is that there. Now, here's the thing. This is 1995, just before the big recession, and the price of each acre of land in Santa Clara was going for $1 million. So the city of Santa Clara had received from 3Com $5 million to dig a hole. And they went, oh boy. So they went and started digging a hole, okay? Put the bulldozer in, and they started taking the dirt, and when they tried to find a place to dump the dirt, the guy, the people said, well, have you had the dirt tested? Is it poison? Oh, no, we didn't. They didn't need to know, because they don't have an environmental thing there. They were trying to sneak it out. And so they said, well, you have to have it tested before we receive this dirt. Well, that dirt had arsenic way over the amount that is that should be for health reasons, and DDT, because it was a golf course and a orchard, and the golf course was mismanaged tremendously, and I know that place to play that before I became a true environmentalist golf, which will play more. Okay, but when you see a pond that's algae infested at golf courses, and then if you see a bright, nice, beautiful one, well, you could put chlorine, a whole bunch of chlorine in it, but easy is just pour some arsenic in it. It destroys everything. And that makes it look crystal clear, but it's very, and that got into the soil. So they said, oh my God, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. City of Santa Clara doesn't really like me, do that now. Right now, because this was a long time ago. I was teaching at Wilcox, and we were working out here, and they were going to take the pond and say, just cover it up, okay? And then we'll move the pond to the center of Lewiston, okay? And we came, I had students come and said, wait a minute, are you going to leave, there's arsenic and DDT at high levels that can make people sick, and you're gonna leave it there? You think you're just gonna bury it? And they go, okay, we all agree to clean it up. All in favor? Aye, we did. See, so one voice, it's like one high school kid, it was about 2 or 3 of us, that made that comment, and that they had to. They were going to try to sneak that through and move that pond and just cover up that arsenic. So, We also said, we have just planted some beautiful oak trees that are 8 inches tall. And there's special oak trees that are from the Guadalupe watershed. And you're going to destroy these children's oak trees. So we kind of hammed it up a little bit. But they had to clean it up. And that was the right thing to do, right? Is that right? Would you say that's the right thing for a city to do?
Yep. They
had $5 million. Well, here's what happened, though. This is kind of the crazy part. Okay, there's the site, Mercury News, that states the city estimated 74,000 cubic yards. And the idea was the wetland cost the city $4 million. And me and a couple of students said, holy, we just made the city pay, spend $4 million. But there's a voice. There's just a voice. This is the right thing to do, okay? And if they started to, they would get in trouble if they tried to just cover it up. And they knew it. But I think if no one said anything, it would have happened. And then, 50 years, 100 years from now, people might get sick and go, what's wrong? I don't know. It would be an Aaron Brockovich, PG&E thing. This is the quote. $4 million. So we made them spend $4,163,000. But they had $5 million. Hey, they're still ahead, right? Okay. So then there's our the first plan for returning this to a natural area, and you see the Guadalupe River, and you see the cross-hatched area is. Or right next to, right there is Hetch Hetchy Pipes, and then there's that area would be savanna, and there's the oak savanna, oak woodland. So this is what we're going to try to do, is return this back to some native California habitat. And we call that oak savanna, perennial grassland, butterfly garden, and an oak woodland. Okay, are pretty much our major habitats that we're going to focus. So we started our restoration begins. These are high school kids that are standing on shovels because of the dirt is like unbelievably adobe soil. It's really tough. So this was probably in the year 2000. By the way, this guy with the hat right here has a PhD from Berkeley now. Okay, and that was probably when he was in the 9th or 10th grade. So he's come back and been a proponent. Dr. Greenia now. The major. What happened on our first year when we planted, we were a complete failure. Complete failure. You know why? Because it was all adobe soil, but it was subsoil from a street they made. So they took the bulldozer and got the subsoil and moved it on top. And so we were trying to, it was like sterile soil. And nothing grew. We probably lost 90% of the plants. And then bristly ox tongue actually came out, and there was millions of bristly ox tongue, which is an invasive species. And poor high school students spent, entire summer removing bristly ox tongue, and it was really it's horrible. So again, mistakes and needs for adaptive management. So when you start a project, one of the things that we have found is that you have to use what is called adaptive management methods. You can set up your plans, you can have your PhDs and doctors and specialists in restoration and botanists and such, and then you start planting, and you're going to run into trouble somehow. Something is going to occur, and that you're going to have to be able to change what you thought you were going to do. We're having that trouble with the city of Santa Clara because they put their name on this the grant that we just got for $106,000, and we sent it out, and we weren't an entity. It belongs to the city of Santa Clara, so we just gave it to the Parks and Recreation director and said, you want to put your name on it and let us do this? And he said, fine. We did a CEQA, which is we have to do research and to make sure that the unions and contracts are proper, the environment is proper. And so he did. And now when I go there and say, oh, I ordered too much rock for the creek, so I want to use some of that rock to buy rolls of cardboard. And he goes, no. But I said, I made this, I ordered too much rock. I got, and I have this 3,000. I said, no, you only said you needed $400 for it, and that's what it was spent. So they are very naive, and everyone else, Lynn Trulio from San Jose State, who's in charge of the scientific research of the South Bay wildlife, returning the wetlands to the salt ponds. When it's 10,000 acres, she's there, and she's finding that they have to alter what they thought would be good. Here was these great scientists that thought they were, the restorationists on this big project, and they're constantly adapting what they thought they had to do and change. So when you get out there, when they thought, oh, well, just undo the levee of the salt ponds, do the left, they found out that when it was still, the dissolved oxygen level was so bad on that it would kill. When we get to the other, it would kill anything in that area. So they couldn't do that. So they've had to work out and oxygenate water and do all sorts of different things that they didn't think they had to do. So you need adaptive management techniques and being successful in any one there. Examples, of what happens here is people know that, when you take something out of the universe and everything else, everything else, oysters were killed in San Francisco Bay. There used to be oysters. How do we know that? Anybody read Jack London's stories? They call him the oyster pirate. He was a high school kid. He dropped out of high school. He went to the library. And then when he wanted some money, he would sneak a rowboat out from Oakland and go out to the oyster beds that were there and steal the oysters and then go sell them to the bars. And he was a pirate because if he got caught, people would kill him, shoot him, for stealing their area of oysters because they're preparing oysters on that. Butterfly garden. Soil was landfill for McMill, no nutrients, bristly oxide. Native need watering only for first 2 years. That's false. We're finding out all these things that we thought we would do. We have altered, and we'll go into a little more to that. So 1999 restoration failure. Planted about 50 to 80 1-gallon pots. Broadcast water once a week. Most died. And then now our revised plan, and this is important. So we put the ground to that, and we watered, and what we were watering was all of that seed bed that was already there, of all the invasive seeds of the animals were there. So we watered them, all the weeds came up. Okay, so here's what we did. We got cardboard. We took the biology textbook boxes that came for the new biology textbooks. I laid them all flat, and we took them all out, took those back, and laid them out on the ground. And I don't know if I have that picture. And we laid all them, and it said, on the Prentice Hall biology book, and we put all the cardboard out, and then we laid mulch. And the mulch we got just from the street. It wasn't the special $12,000 mulch that you get in the condominiums and all the treated. We just got any type of mulch that they had. Okay? That they were cutting trees down. And they liked it because then they don't have to take it all the way away. They can just cut trees and set apart and boom, put it right there and goes that. And they stack it up. And so we have 2 to 4 inches, actually 4 inches of mulch is the best. And we replanted in 2001 and 2. And then, 4 years later, this is what we got. It just blossomed. It just went spectacular. And everybody goes there and goes, whoa, these are all native California plants. Okay, and in this butterfly garden. And 1, you got a cardboard. 2, you got to water year-round for 2 years. Every plant, individual plant. We don't use drip system except on the water one. And then 3, you have to have a little luck. And I went back just recently, and this is new data for me, that the precipitation rate in 2004, 2005, 2006. And it turns out that in their 3rd, 4th year that were backing off on watering was very wet year. There was over 4 inches of rain in December. And so we're looking at the success of the restoration program also depends on climate and in the precipitation level. And if it's a dry year, like this year, and we're planting, you know what? I water some of these old plants. And if I walk by them, I go out there for the last 400 days, I've been there every day. I missed 10 days not being there, okay? And as I walk around these plants, I can almost, I'm sensing that they're dormant and they look dried out, but some of them look really dried out and we would lose them.